Welcome back to the Allegheny Northern in N scale. In our last how-to video, we talked about doing winter snow, and we did some very thick snow and basically made the dead of winter. Well, the layout is mostly in the season of fall, and we needed a way to transition from dead of winter back into fall. Now, I've seen some folks do this with scene blocks, mountains, other sort of tall trees, whatever, and that works. You can absolutely do that. But I want to do a different approach because my layout does not have the luxury of putting mountains where I need to separate my scenes. So I want to do a gradual melting of snow. And before we get too far into it, this is a scene that we've started here already, and you can see that the snow is a lot thinner. It's a lot more than just putting on less snow. So before we get too far into it, let's talk about snow. There are different types of snow, and I know that sounds kind of silly, but there are. And you can have very cold and dry snow, which is usually the light, flaky stuff that you really can't make a snowball out of. And then you get the thick, wet, heavy snow, which is great for closing schools and businesses and making snowballs and igloos and all that sort of stuff. So, and then you've got fresh snow and you've got old snow. And the fresher the snow, usually the whiter and the fluffier it is. And the older the snow, you start getting into a wetter, icier look. And so that is what we are going to try to model here. The melting snow, the icy snow, where snow is going to remain pretty much just in the shadows, and then it's going to fade out. So what we've got here is the scene that is going to complete the transition from fall into winter, winter into fall, depending on which way you're looking. And we're going to use this road and these houses and yards as our transition here. So what I want to do is I want to show that I've got snow piled up in places. So where the road's been plowed, where it's been freezing and thawing, and then I want to blend all of that into where I'm starting to get a little bit of heavier snow here. And then I want to soften this edge between the hard winter and the melting snow. Now, what we need to do is we're going to use all of the same products that we used in the full-on winter scene. We're just going to use them a little bit differently. I'll show you that mix. And then, okay, so our area is still pretty coated in scenic cement, which was a gloss matte medium, a Mod Podge version. So everything is still kind of wet, and we're going to use that to our advantage. And I am taking the scenic snowflakes. This is from Deluxe Materials, and we are going to use this product. It's a little bit finer than the Woodland Scenics version, and I mentioned all of that in the last video. And we're just going to coat some areas where we think snow would still be lingering. You can pick a location for your sunlight, maybe some locations where maybe some snow was plowed. Basically, you want to find the shadows or make the shadows, force the perspective as to where this snow is going to be. And we're just going to give everything a nice quick coating. Don't worry if you get anything on the road or on the houses. But that's not going to stay. We'll take that off, and there's a little different process for that. But basically, I just want to get an initial coating on everything to just kind of see how the scenery is going to look. Okay, our next step is to start at the base of the road and build up. So what we're going to have is we're going to have our melting snow and our ice down below, and that is just from the runoff of the snow that's been melting. And to create that, we're going to use AK Interactive's Ice Sparkles and Woodland Scenics Realistic Water. You're going to mix that into a paste that kind of sort of looks like a thick syrup here. And so just kind of the consistency, it looks like, it's kind of goopy, but it's actually looks kind of gross. But we're going to put that just here on the edge of the road. And as you can see, it's kind of got a little bit of a sparkle to it. When it dries, it will absolutely sparkle. And so we're going to put this in areas where we think ice would accumulate. I'm going to use this palette knife. You could use a brush. And then we're just going to sort of pile this up here along the side of the road, anywhere we think ice would be. You can actually have ice in, in the grass areas, so you can feel free to put that anywhere where you are going to imagine melting snow. Kind of draw it out a little bit because it's gonna run off into the road and other places. And a lot of times when you get the winter, the drains become plugged up with ice and snow that's been piled up, and so you don't really get good drainage. So that's what you're going to look for, and we'll go ahead and finish this road. Okay, and when you are done, you are going to get something that looks exactly like this. Now, one thing that I do want to caution you, and this will vary by scale, obviously since we're working in N scale here, every little bump looks a lot bigger than, when standing next to, say, a person or a vehicle. So be very careful how much you pile this stuff up, because don't forget, you don't want an ice, chunk that's 4 foot thick. So try to keep it pretty thin. Okay, so this is our end goal. And I know you're sitting there thinking, well, wait a minute, end goal, we missed some steps. No, you sure did, but I want to show you what we're trying to accomplish before we actually go ahead and do it. So here you see our ice, and that was the first step that we made. The second step here is a paste that I'm going to show you how we make, and that just represents snow that's melted and then refrozen. And then in the back here we have some of the shoveled snow, and that's just the clumpy snow that's still pushed off the road. So we actually have 3 different layers here, and then we're going to top it all off when we're done with another layer of the fine flake snow. So this step here, this is the intermediate step. This is the step you are missing. And what I want to do is I want to show you how to do that. It's very simple. And all we're going to do is we're going to take our mixing cup again, and we are going to put in a nice amount of the Woodland Scenic Soft Flake Snow, and then we're going to mix it with what is our Scenic Cement. It's just gloss Mod Podge and water. And we're going to make the same kind of a paste. And what that's going to do is it's going to make this kind of a sticky paste looking snow, and it's perfect for wet snow. And you can go a little bit thicker, and the Mod Podge is going to add a glossy shine to it, so it's going to look like it's melted and then it's refrozen. And then while that is all still wet, you're going to backfill with just a little bit of the soft flake snow from Deluxe Materials, and then you're going to hit it with their icy sparkles, and you are going to get something that looks just like this. It's going to look like slushy melting snow. So let's go ahead and mix up a batch of that now. So for those of you who are recipe type folks, you're going to be upset once again, because I'm not a recipe guy. I pretty much season to taste, and that is how we are going to do this mixture. So I've got my snow in there, and then I'm going to bring in my gloss medium here, and I'm just going to put that in there and mix this around until I get something that looks like a paste. And the thicker you go, the more pasty it will be, the less wet it will look. So you want to go a little bit thick on it. Okay, so you can kind of control your own destiny at this point. This is how I like it. This is about where I want it. It's kind of clumpy, but it's still it's very wet, as you can tell. Depending on how much of the gloss medium you add will determine how soupy this is, and you'll get different snow effects based on how much you add. So I would go slow, add it in as you go, and then you'll see what comes out. And then you can work it from there. So the process here is much like the ice. You're going to take a little bit of this paste, you're going to slap it where you'll want it, and then you're going to sort of just tease it into place. Now, you don't want to go too high once again, because you're going to build this up in layers. So make sure you keep enough of your ice showing. You don't want to cover that, because that's where your melt is coming from. And then you're going to put just enough there to get that wet snow. Grab your ice sparkles and go ahead and just add some of those over the top. I know they're really fine. You probably, I don't know if you can see them on the camera or not, but trust me, they are there. And then the very next step, and this is a careful step. And why I say that is you don't want too much snow on the edge of your spoon, because you don't want to accidentally flick snow all over the place, because you're trying to do a little more controlled. So after you have this, you're going to backfill just a tiny little bit here to sort of smooth out the transitions between the snow and the not snow. And then I take a fan brush if I don't like the way it's shaped, and I sort of push it into place. Now I'm doing all this while the scenery base and glue is wet, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to have to come back and add more scenery spray to this, because it's going to kind of funk it all up. So I want to keep the ground wet, I want to keep the area I'm working wet, and I want to keep stacking these processes on top of each other. And then if you want, the very last step that you would want to do here is add a little bit of the Deluxe Materials shoveled snow. And when I say a little bit, I do mean a little bit, because at this point you've started to melt. So depending on how much snow you're trying to model, there may not be a whole lot of it left. And then you just sort of want to tease it into place, make sure it's all pushed down, make sure you don't have any unrealistic lumps, so to speak. And then you can move on to the next step, which is going to be taking care of the houses. Okay, there's no special trick to the houses. You're just going to take your snow paste and you're going to apply it where you think snow may have stayed, been a little thicker, it's in the process of melting. And then once you've got it situated the way you want it, hit it with a little bit of the ice sparkles from Deluxe Materials, and you have your snowy houses. This is a fairly convincing technique, but you don't want to go crazy with it. You can use the same technique if you wanted to do a full-on winter scene, but since we're modeling melting snow, we want to be kind of sparse with it, just because it's melting, so we don't want it to be everywhere. And that, once again, that is totally determined by how far into the melt you are. So that will determine how wet your snow looks and some other things. So this is the look that I'm going for here. This is what I want it to look like. So I'm not going to go too much more with that. Okay, so if you followed my steps or some variation thereof, you are going to get a scene that looks something like this. And that is pretty much what we want to see for a transition. You've got snow piled up in some places where snow would be piled up. You have it not piled up in places where it would have melted first, say like on a roof or in the yard. And you can set up your directional sunlight, and then you would just plant your trees and that afterwards. Remember, when you're in melting, typically you don't have, your trees don't have snow on them anymore. That falls off first, and you would get something like this. Now, if you want to take it a step further, you can go ahead and add some road slush and grime, and we are going to do just that, and I'll show you how we make that here. Just a second. This next step is not going to be for everyone. If you like the pristine look of snow, or you want this melting snow to look clean, you're going to want to skip this step, because what we're going to do is we're going to add this slushy, kind of messy stuff along the side of the road here. And what I want to do is I want to, make it look like that's the runoff that's picking up all the sand and the dirt, salt, everything that's on the road. And then I want to kind of show it as running across places, but I want it to be icy. So what I'm doing is I'm taking AK Interactive, and this is an acrylic. It's a real thick acrylic paint. It looks almost like a paste, and it's called Wet Ground. And I mixed it in a cup with a mixture of water and gloss medium. Once again, we want that shine. And then I just applied it with a brush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it, and in the areas where I want this sort of a sloppy mess to be, I'm just going to apply it like this. You can run some tire tracks through it if you want to. This is also really good to get in the snow itself, because the snow really doesn't stay clean for very long, especially near the road. It starts picking up, well, road grime. And so we want to represent that here, because even though this road has been plowed, it's still going to be kind of gross. So this is a thin layer, and we want to tease it out a little bit. We don't want it to look, we don't want to look like we painted it on there. We want it to look kind of natural. So we're going to go ahead and just smear that around a little bit, and then we are going to take the AK Interactive. This is the ice sparkles. I'm going to use this. These are a little thicker bead, so I'm going to use them along the end, right where the snow pack is. And then I'm going to take the finer ice sparkles from Deluxe Materials, and I'm going to shake that out over the edge here. And then you are going to get something that sparkles and shines kind of like mud. And let me see if I can get you a shot where I'm not standing in the light. If you want it to look a little more chopped up, like I do down here, you can take your fan brush and just sort of tease it around a little bit, and that'll give it the sort of slushy, mushy look that all of us Northerners are very familiar with this time of year. And you can just sort of tease this out. This little bit here that's come off, it's not really attached to anything. You can just brush that off. It's not gonna do you any good. And when you are done, you should have something that kind of looks like that. And that is going to be your icy, slushy road. Okay, so if you take all of the techniques that I've showed you in this video, you will end up with a scene that looks a lot like this. The only thing that I added off camera, and it was kind of an impromptu, was a small brush, and added a little bit of the Within Scenic's realistic water right along the edge of the snow to give it that actual melting appearance along the road where water would be running. I did not put any ice crystals or anything in it. It's straight Within Scenic's. You can kind of see the I'm trying to stand out of my shadow, obviously the light's behind me here, but just wanted to get a little bit of that glisten on the road that you'll see in winter as things start to melt and the road becomes somewhat passable again. But all of these techniques combined here gave you this. And if you try any of these techniques and do a video on it, please feel free to share that link in the comments below. I'd love to see what you guys are working on if you try this technique. Or if you come up with some better way to do it or a different way to do it, feel free to share your experience down below. It may help another modeler who is trying to do the same learn a new technique. If you have any questions about what you saw or didn't see, or any of the other products that were used, anything like that, feel free to leave a comment. I do try to answer all the comments. If I can't get to all the answers, sometimes I just give you a like. But I do try to respond in one way, shape, or form. So I hope this was helpful for you. One last thing I want to do here is turn off the main light and just show you under a little bit of blue light here, and you will get a little bit of an evening glow if you turn down the lights. And I do have a blue strip of LEDs up above, and you can see it looks a little bit better without that harsh light on it.